In the first week, examining the Gospel of Mark, Simon spoke about the importance of those opening words. The beginning of the evangelical Jesus, the Emperor, Son of God. An important, dangerous message to declare in a world ruled by an earthly emperor. Caesar was not known for his desire to share his power with any man or any god. The Israelites longed for the days of a new exodus to free themselves from Roman rule and looked towards the foretold Messiah who would free them. During this time, many men had been seen around the land, declaring that they were the long-waited-for Messiah. In Mark's Gospel, he uses these short episodes of events from Jesus' life to get the point across. Jesus was different from these other men. From his baptism in the River Jordan into his ministry in Galilee, Jesus had come to show the world what it really looks like to have a heavenly rule here on earth. And it was remarkably different from what they were expecting. In the story so far, we've examined just how we began to flip our ideas on its head of what God's kingdom coming to earth just looks like. Jesus had power over the spiritual realm, which he used to free people. He had power over illness, which he used to free people to live in society. He had power to forgive sins, and he created disciples from those traditionally left on the outside of the more polite society. He was starting to show his rule right there and then by exerting his authority in ways to free and release, not conquer and dominate like traditional earthly kings. All leading up to that Friday afternoon where something radical happened to shift the very fabric of our world. To help us examine today's episode, we are going to start with an awareness test. If you've seen this before, please don't spoil it for others.
This is an awareness test. How many passes does the team in white make? The answer is 13. But did you see the moonwalking bear?
It's easy to miss something you're not looking for. In today's reading, we see this play out with the Pharisees on two different days. The Pharisees were smart, learned scholars who had dedicated their lives to examining the scriptures. They could recall passages and spent long hours dedicated to understand in detail so that they could ensure they followed every cross and every dot in the letter of the law. They were waiting, longing for the Messiah to come and free them from the rule of the Roman Emperor. As Jesus and his disciples roamed through a field, his disciples reached out, grabbed some grain, and threshed it or broke it. We could delve into the reasons why the Pharisees were actually in the field that day, trying to catch Jesus out. But we can also see, whatever the reason, they took this as an opportunity to point out, haha, we've got you now, Jesus. You see, here are Jesus' disciples breaking the Sabbath by doing work. What kind of teacher allows his disciples to break the Sabbath? Jesus' reply, when we stop to think about it, should knock us for 6. Have you not read? Mark doesn't tell us Jesus' tone, but I'm sure the irony was not lost on them. Here he was, the son of a carpenter, schooling these learned scholars on the scriptures. Have you not read what David did when he and his companions were hungry and in need? This story Jesus tells is about when David had been anointed king, but had not yet taken his throne. Here, hiding in plain sight, Jesus is telling them, I've been anointed king, and I'm waiting to take the throne. But he also reminds them that they're missing the point of the law. The Pharisees, so busy counting basketball passes that they're missing the moonwalking gorilla. They're focused on what to follow, the instructions, not why God gave them the law in the first place. I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. The laws were intended to show the Israelites how to worship God in obedience. Obedience to the law should be a delight and a desire, in thanks to God for rescuing them from the backbreaking slavery in Egypt, not additional shackles burdening people. Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. 6 days you shall labour and do your work, but the seventh is a Sabbath to the Lord your God, and on it you shall not do any work, neither you, nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your male or female servant, nor your animals, nor any foreigners residing in your towns. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them, but he rested on the Sabbath. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. Once again, the Pharisees had missed the point of the Sabbath, which was right there in the law. Not you, nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your male or female servant, nor your animal, nor your foreigner. God's laws are designed to protect the poor, the needy, the overworked, the outsider. I like how an Old Testament scholar, Walton Bragman, put it. The Sabbath law should mark God's people out as different because they acknowledge people don't earn their standing in the community through works. They are entitled to it simply because they belong to God's community. By focusing too closely on the details, they'd turn the law into a tool of oppression, forcing people to go hungry or without medical care so that you were not seen to work. And just like David taking command of the consecrated bread, Jesus was declaring this beginning of his rule. He was the Lord of the Sabbath. He's not removing the laws. Rest is still important. He was returning the focus to the correct place, about living in freedom of serving God who loves them so much that he'd rescue them from slavery. The laws should be served in loving obedience to a God who loves them unconditionally. So we can ask ourselves, what are we missing that we're not looking for? What are we holding too close to the details when we miss the broader strokes of what it looks like to live in a community? Just like in this interaction with the Pharisees, where might God be working in our town that's a little uncomfortable for us? We've been praying for healing and unity. Where might God's answer be playing out that we've missed because we're holding a little too closely to the old? Where are we holding onto things that might be harming ourselves or others because the tradition or survival feels like what it should be? This might seem like a big step from Jesus talking about the Sabbath, but let's rewind a couple more days to the first half of our reading, when the Pharisees, not happy with Jesus' answer about why he was eating with tax collectors, came back again. This time they tried another tact. John is in prison and his disciples are fasting. Why do your disciples not also fast? Once again, Jesus doesn't answer in a way we expect. He starts by exerting his authority as the awaited king. He is the bridegroom. He's at a party celebrating new people entering. What kind of miserable wedding would it be if everyone fasted while the reception was on? If you're married, think back to your wedding. What would it have been like at the reception if your guests just sat there abstaining from the feast? Then he uses two illustrations to explain that for his kingdom to take place, there needs to be change. The most memorable one for us is possibly the story of needing new wineskins. Wineskins are made from animal leather, which when new, stretches and molds. But when it ages, it dries out and becomes brittle. The Pharisees would have known that if you put new wine into old wineskins, as the wine ferments, the gas being released tries to stretch that wineskin. Old wineskins are not able to stretch to allow room for the gas, and instead they split apart under the force. Once again, hiding here in plain sight, Jesus is explaining that his kingdom is the start of the new covenant. Jesus is telling them that the new covenant needs new boundaries. He's not throwing everything out. The story is still about old wine and new wine. It's not wine and cocktails or beer. But to enact God's kingdom, he's there to change it slightly. To free his people from the slavery of sin, there has to be change. The law is not enough to save people. If it was, there's no need for the cross. So God's doing something new, and it requires a new response. Jesus is redefining what a heavenly rule looks like on earth and who's invited. He's redefining, but not abandoning, what it looks like to live in obedience under God's rule. And he's reminding them that the God of their ancestors, the same God that they searched for in the scriptures, that they fasted for, was a God of forgiveness and mercy. So, as we reflect on what this means for us, where is God today redefining what his heavenly rule looks like on earth, here in Maritna, in our homes, in our workplaces, and in schools? Where is God gently prompting us, let go of the old ways? We here as a church have lots to celebrate in how God has and will continue to use our building, the people, and his church to be the salt and light in this town, spreading the gospel, sharing God's forgiveness, and demonstrating mercy, love, and compassion. But we can also acknowledge that Maritna has seen a lot of changes in the last few years, not just with floods, but with the movement of businesses, schools, banks, and other things. Yes, we should ask questions about whether or not they should happen, but we should also examine what changes might be necessary so that God's kingdom can be revealed and established here in a greater way. As we look to our next gathering on a Mount Major to pray over Greater Shepparton and pray for unity between the wider church and town, what do we need to let go of so that unity can prevail and that God can unveil more of his kingdom right here? The message of the gospel is transformative, so don't be surprised if our prayers are answered with transformation, not only of us, but of the people around us and our town and our community. Jesus says, Maritna was not made for mankind. Maritna was made for mankind, not mankind for Maritna. I am the Lord of Maritna. Let us pray.